going ahead. So before also in chapter 4, you have studied this thing, Prakriti and Purusha and Jiva. Their relationship you have studied there in chapter 4. Somebody is remembering what you have studied there. Who is the doer? And that was the concept there in chapter 4. And among these three, who is the doer? And what in conclusion, we will not go into detail, but what in conclusion, who is the doer? Somebody is remembering?
The Prakriti through Purusha, under the control of Purusha, Prakriti is the doer.
So Prakriti is also doer, correct. But complete understanding among the three.
Purusha.
There, the word exactly fourth chapter, Purusha is not there, but something like Paramatma or Bhagwan, like that word is there in fourth chapter. But Purusha we can consider here Paramatma or Bhagwan. Then what exactly, just I will summarize, correct what you have told. There it is mentioned who is the doer among the three. That point in fourth chapter it is resolved by telling that these Jiva desires. I'm telling the conclusion directly. Jiva desires, and then Paramatma or Bhagwan. Exactly verses. Just I will open the verses. There I will come. 14, 4.14 something is there. You come to know. Even now. I'm not getting the exactly words, but conclusion is Jiva desires, then a Paramatma or Bhagwan. Exactly word I'm not getting. The one of them or Krishna tell me myself. Then Krishna what he tells? Me tells Krishna. Krishna sanction that desire. And Krishna gives sanction. And then what? Prakriti what it does? Material nature. It fulfills that desire. So all these things, three of them, they contribute in any action. And if something has to perform, then first Jiva has to desire. And then Krishna sanctions. Then Prakriti fulfills that desire. So this is the conclusion in that section, in fourth chapter. So is the conclusion all of you aware? Or is it new? Somebody has any problem in this? Is this clear? whatever I have written. Okay. Then with the help of this, now same. Now what are the question remaining? The Prakriti and Purusha. And answer to that question remaining. So this is clear. Then keep this because somebody has any confusion. Now, with this understanding, we'll go ahead. Now, what is the verse? 22nd verse. Hetu prakrutir कार्य कारण कर्तृत्वे हेतु प्रकृतिर उच्यते पुरुषः सुख दुःखानां भोक्तृत्वे हेतु उच्यते. So what Krishna is telling? Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes. Nature is cause, but for not for the jiva, but only for material things. Nature is a material cause. Means our body is kshetra is what? Material or spiritual? And we saw it gets transformed. Material. And kshetra, body is material. And how the body is coming? It is coming from prakriti, we saw until now. So now what is the cause of body? Prakriti is the cause of body. And kshetra, and because that is material things. And whereas material cause, whereas the living entity is the cause for various suffering and enjoyment in this world. So how the sufferings and enjoyments are coming in this world? They are coming by living entities. And this Krishna has told till now. So we'll understand how the sufferings and enjoyments are coming from living entity and not from Prakriti. We'll understand when we discuss the purport. Somebody can read yellow part.
The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 84 lakhs different species of life, and these varieties are creation of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body, not of himself as he is.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So what is mentioned here, that different manifestation of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. This first line Prabhupada has written. So it is based on the translation only. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes. And at that time I mentioned that this body is also material, kshetra, because it is changing. And senses, and they are part of the body. So they are coming from material nature. So there are 8.84 lakhs different species of life. And these varieties are creations of material nature. Right? So all species, and body is created by material nature. So then all species are created also by material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasure of the living entity. So how the variety is arising? Because of living entity. Because different living entities, they have different desires and they want different sensual pleasures. That's why who does desires to live in his body or that. So depending on that body, material nature has created. Before also I have told that Jiva desires and material nature fulfill that desire. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. Then when Jiva, and same Jiva is going through different body. So then he is enjoying happiness and distress in that body. His material happiness and distress are due to his body. So material happiness is coming from where? The body, not
Body.
himself as he is. So who is Jiva? He is spiritual. But spiritual happiness will come from the spiritual thing for him or super soul. But material happiness and distress will come from body. This much is clear. Somebody can.
In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure. But in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasure for the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total body and instrument senses are offered by material nature. And as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activities. Activity.
Thank you. So what is mentioned here is that material nature is a place of struggle. So we'll see how. So we saw till now in his original state, and Jiva is pure. And so pure Jiva doesn't have any desire. He's satisfied. He's in his real state, pure state. But when desire comes, that to lord it over material nature, then he comes in the material world, conditioned Jiva. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasure for the body. And everybody is struggling. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. And the senses are instrument for gratifying desire. So how this body Jiva is getting? Because Jiva wants to gratify the particular sense, and he has desire to gratify through particular sense. He wants to get particular type of happiness through that sense. So according to that, he is getting the body. Like he has, he wants to gratify his senses by sleeping, and then he gets the body of beer. And so similarly, different body jivas are getting. The senses are instrument for gratifying desire there. So how he is getting happiness or gratifying his desires? By senses. The sum total body and instruments, senses, are offered by material. Everything who is offering, same point.
Material nature.
And as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. That will come, we'll discuss at that time. Somebody can read. Only one line is there. According to one's desire and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarter. And this is the conclusion till now. According to one's desire and activities. What is the will get body. Being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. So Jiva is also the cause, although it is fulfilled by Prakriti. Both of them are the cause in getting that body. Somebody can read it.
Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into a body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into a body of a hog, then he is forced to eat the stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the super soul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1 as follows. Vas Suparna Sayuja Sakhya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul and in all circumstances is present as the super soul of Paramatma.
Thank you, bro. So, um, so what is mentioned in essence in this paragraph? That till now, what is mentioned, Jiva is getting different bodies. Now it is mentioned here that he is there in particular kind of body, and he is in the body. He is placed in the body means automatically he is coming under the laws of material nature, and because material nature is giving him the body, and that's why according to his material nature's law, it is giving body to the jiva. Then what is happening? Then he is getting different body and according to his different desires. And then for this time, suppose an entity means a jiva is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put in the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. Whatever body he is getting, he is behaving in that way, because of material nature and because of the body which he has received. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of hog, similarly, he is acting according to that body. Then similarly, if living entity is in the body of demigod, then he is acting according to the demigod's body. So this is the law of nature. According to that they are acting. But whatever body jiva is getting, whatever is the circumstance, super soul is there. And we saw that a super soul, and body, these three things are different. Body is changing, jiva is, but soul and super soul, they are not changing. They are the same in different body. This is only mentioned in this. And so in what we discuss in this verse, that body is coming from material nature, and happiness is coming because of what? Living entities identification. With living entity wants particular type of happiness. So according to that, he is getting senses and body. So in last verse, what we saw, this material nature and living entity, both of them are eternal, we saw in essence. And now in this verse, what we studied here, the functions. What is their function? Material nature function is it gives body, and jiva he desires. According to that, material nature is acting. Clear? when and then one analogy is given by acharyas that they are mentioning one will get happiness or distress by fulfilling his desire or not fulfilling his desire. So for that they give an analogy. If somebody is watching a movie, then he will get happiness or distress. And somebody doesn't watch the movie, another person who is not watching the movie, and he will not get that person. So similarly, so some jiva and they wants particular type of happiness. So for that happiness, they require a particular senses. But that we know already, we discussed. But in this movies analogy, what happens? If somebody is more watching movie, he will get happiness, and somebody is not watching movie, he will not get happiness. And so similarly, material nature, what happens? If jiva, if jiva is wants to enjoy material nature, so then he will get particular body. So as similarly, one wants to see the movie for happiness. So this jiva for happiness, he wants body. Means what is the thing? What is the driving point here? That jiva's desire. Jiva's desire to enjoy. So because of that, jiva is getting the body and enjoy materially through his senses. So that's why he is getting the body. He's here mentioned bhoktrutve, and he has desire to be enjoyer. That's why he is mentioned in the verse. Word is coming bhoktrutve, enjoyment. So this is the conclusion of this verse. So in next verse, so now we understood in verse 21 that jiva has a desire to enjoy. That's why he's getting the body. And what happens because of this desire? This is important verse. Verse is Purusha prakritisto hi bhunte prakritijan guna karanam guna sangasya sad asad yoni janmasu. What is mention is the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life. So when living entity has a desire to enjoy separately and to lord it over material nature, then what is happen? He will get body and then he is coming into the material nature. We discuss laws of nature. Then he follows the laws of nature, ways of life, and a material ways of life, enjoying the three modes of material nature. And he is enjoying. This is due to the association with that material nature because of the facility or association material nature he got. Because of that, he is enjoying. Thus, he meets the good and evil among various species. So he is good means his happiness and distress he is getting in this body. This is the translation. What happens when he gets the body? He's getting happiness and distress. We can read.
This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entity transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another, just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by the false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the living entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, or a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on.
So what Prabhupada is telling, this verse is very important. And why this verse is important? Because we'll understand here that how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. So how it transform living entity one body to another? Because of his desire. It is desire to enjoy. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another, just as one changes dress. We saw yatha mansansi jiranani. And this change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Why it is called false manifestation? It is real now, because that is not Jiva's nature, to enjoy materially. That's why it is false. Prakriti is real, and he is getting a true body, because false means he is captivated by his false manifestation, his own material manifestation. And his true manifestation is spiritual, and we saw Jiva is spiritual. Due to this desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Because of his desire to enjoy, he is getting. And under the influence of material desire, the living entities, because of this desire, he is getting different body. Prabhupada has given some example of body. So what we understand that how a living entity is transmigrating, and this Prabhupada has mentioned here. And also the how the living entity is getting attached, that also Prabhupada has mentioned here in this paragraph. Then there is a small section that in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances. In all these material cases and different circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to the association with the different modes. Because of association of different modes is getting different desires. So how association of different modes he is getting different desires. He wants, there are three modes, and sattva, raja, tama. If he has desire of sattva and enjoying sattva, then he is getting body of demigods, and it is mentioned by Prabhupada. If he has a rajoguna, then he is getting a body of like a human being, or like lion, and tamoguna, like many the animal species were completely in ignorant form, like bug and aquatics. So all these kinds of different bodies he is getting because of different modes of nature. The next pink one somebody can read.
One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige himself to transfer from one body to another because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change the conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjun is hearing the signs of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to be to this hearing process, will lose his long cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life.
So now Prabhupada has given solution in this paragraph. What is problem? Problem is Jiva is getting different body and because of his desire to enjoy. So how one can overcome this desire to enjoy? For that, Prabhupada has given solution. What Prabhupada is telling, that one has to rise above three modes. He has to become situated in the transcendental position and to come out of this problem. And that transcendental position is Krishna consciousness. So how then one can become Krishna consciousness? So one will begin from the hearing. Before that, Prabhupada has mentioned, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer. So what material consciousness is doing? Is transferring from one body to another. Because he has desires, we saw that, desire to enjoy from the time immemorial. How much is the duration of that desire? We don't know. But he has to change that conception. Right? And that conception, that change can be effected only. So beginning part is what? From hearing from authoritative sources. And he is hearing from one of the book, and he's hearing from devotees. So he is hearing holy names, and in many form he is hearing. The best example is here. One example is here, best example. Arjuna is hearing from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose the long cherished desire. What was the desire? To dominate material nature, to lord it over material nature. That desire will go away by hearing. And gradually and proportionately, he reduces his long desire to dominate. That will happen gradually and proportionately to the, this is very important. And although we are hearing, but we are not observing the result, then one may think that this process will not work. But it takes time and it works gradually and proportionately with the intensity with which we are hearing and with the attentiveness. And quality hearing will will work very fast, and if quality is not good, then it will take time. And even though quality is good, also that will not happen immediately, and it will take some time. That will happen gradually. And in a Vedic mantra, it is said that one becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By hearing, what happens? He will take the association of Lord and his devotees. And by associating with the Lord, he will proportionately relishes his, he will become happy spiritually and not materially. And now this happiness is not material happiness, it is spiritual happiness, which is coming from hearing. And now, here what Krishna has mentioned, that the Prabhupada gave the solution, but what Krishna told is, because of that desire to enjoy, Jiva has, because of his association with the material nature, association with the three modes of material nature, he is getting the body. This is the conclusion of this verse. So now, till now, what Krishna has told about Prakriti, Krishna has told. And about living entity, because living entity is Purusha, living entity or soul, we can say. Soul is a Purusha, Krishna has told. Now, in the next coming verse, verse number 23, and what Krishna is telling now, another Purusha. And we'll see who is that another Purusha. उपदृष्टा अनुमंता च भर्ता भोक्ता महेश्वरः परमात्मेति चाप्युक्तो देहेस्मिन् पुरुषः पर. What Krishna is telling, that yet in this body there is another, and first he has told one, and a living entity, a transcendental enjoyer, and a Purusha, transcendental, who is the Lord himself, and the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. So that another Purusha is Lord himself, and he is the supreme proprietor, and his name is super soul, Paramatma. And what he is doing there? He is just acting as an overseer and permitter. So Krishna has introduced the super soul. What Prabhupada is telling, somebody can read first line.
It is stated here that the super soul who is always with the individual soul is the representation of the Supreme Lord. He is not an ordinary living entity.
Okay. It's the same thing, whatever in translation is same. Lord is, so here mentioned, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor. Next line.
Because the monist philosophers take the knower of the body to be one, they think that there is no difference between the super soul and the individual soul.
No. Thank you. So what Krishna is telling, what Prabhupada is mentioning, that these devotees will know, that soul and super soul, they are different, and both of them are there in the body. But there is one philosopher who doesn't know wrongly. They are called monist. So according to them, what is there? Super soul and soul. They say they are one only. They are not different. And we have Prabhupada has mentioned this before also. I think in verse 18 or 18. There we have studied this point. Same. Next.
To clarify this, the Lord says that He is represented as the Paramatma in every body. He is different from the individual soul. He is para-transcendental. The individual soul enjoys the activities of a particular field.
Basis.
But the super soul is present not as finite enjoyer, nor as one taking part in the bodily activity, but as the witness, overseer, permitter, and supreme enjoyer. His name is Paramatma, not Atma, and he is transcendental. It is distinctly clear that the Atma and Paramatma are different. The super soul, the Paramatma, has legs and hands everywhere, but the individual soul does not, and because the Paramatma is the Supreme Lord, he is present within to sanction the individual soul desiring material enjoyment. Without the sanction of the Supreme Soul, the individual soul cannot do anything. The individual is Bhukta or the sustained, and the Lord is Bhokta or the maintainer. There are innumerable living entities, and he is staying in them as a friend.
Thank you, bro. So now what Prabhupada is mentioning here, the relationship among the two, soul and super soul, Prabhupada is mentioning, and how we will see here. To clarify this, to clarify the point of monist, and so Krishna is mentioning here they are different, and he is a para transcendental, and he is transcendental. He is not. He doesn't have that desire to enjoy. That's why he is transcendental. He is not coming under the laws of material nature because he doesn't have that desire to enjoy it, to desire to lord it over material nature. The individual soul enjoys the activities of a particular field, and a soul is enjoying particular body, particular field. But the super soul is present not as a finite enjoyer, not nor as one taking part in bodily activities. He is not taking part in bodily activities, but as the witness, who is soul is taking part. He is not, super soul is not taking part. But how then he is acting, what he is doing there? He is just witnessing what soul is doing, and what he is doing, he is just overseeing, and he is permitting whatever soul wants, and he is allowing, and he is the supreme enjoyer, and he is enjoying. His name is Paramatma, not Atma. It's transcendental. Same point, both. It is distinctly clear that the Atma and Paramatma are different. They are different. The super soul, the Paramatma, has legs, hands everywhere. We saw that this in verse 14. But the individual soul doesn't. And because the Paramatma is the Supreme Lord, he is present within to sanction the individual soul's desiring material enjoyment. He just sanctioning. Without the sanction of the Supreme Soul, Paramatma, the individual soul cannot do anything. The individual soul is Bhukta, or the sustained, he is dependent. The Lord is Bhokta, maintainer, is independent. There are innumerable living entities, and he is staying in them as a friend. So Lord is staying with all living entities. That is also he is acting as a friend, as a well-wisher. So now Prabhupada is continuing the same thing, and in next paragraph also we'll see how the relationship, and in this paragraph he mentioned what is the function of soul and super soul. Now he is going more into their relationship in next paragraph. Somebody can read.
Fact is that
The fact
every
is
individual
that
living entity
this continues.
We can decide, bro. Some confusion is happening. Na? Continue, somebody.
The fact is that every individual living entity is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and both of them are very intimately related as friends. But the living entity has the tendency to reject the sanction of the Supreme Lord and act independently in an attempt to dominate the nature. And because he has this tendency, he is called the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy. As long as he is conditioned by the material energy, the Supreme Lord, as his friend, the Super Soul, stays with him just to get him to return to the spiritual energy. The Lord is always eager to take him back to the spiritual energy, but due to his minute independence, the individual entity is continuously rejecting the association of the spiritual life. This misuse of the independence is the cause of his material strife in the conditioned nature. The Lord, therefore, is always giving instructions from within and from without. From without, he gives instructions as stated in Bhagavad Gita. And from within, he tries to convince the living entity that his activities in the material field are not conducive to real happiness. Just give up and turn your faith towards, then you will be happy, he says.
Thank you, bro. So now more here Prabhupada is mentioning the relationship between the two. Every individual living entity is eternally the part and parcel of the Lord. And both of them are very intimately related as friend. You mentioned that. As a friend, Prabhupada previously he has mentioned. But the living entity has the tendency to reject the sanction of the, although he is a friend, Paramatma is a friend, Super Soul is a friend, but living entity doesn't accept the friendship of a Paramatma. And it acts independently. Because he has tendency, he is called the marginal energy. Sometimes he has desire to lord it over, and sometimes he acts pure desire. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy. So, see, Prabhupada says that either we can be in light or in darkness. As long as he is conditioned by the material energy, the Supreme Lord, as his friend, the Super Soul, stays with him just to get him or return to the spiritual energy. Lord is always eager to take him back. And just Lord is waiting, to take spiritual energy. But due to his minute independence, the living entity is continually rejecting the association of spiritual light. This is the relationship. So living entity sometimes has spiritual desire, soul, and sometimes it has material desire. But the Supreme Lord is just watching this. And he is eager to take him, but he is not doing anything. He is sanctioning. And soul is not turning towards towards super soul. He is completely misusing his independence because of his desire to enjoy. The Lord, therefore, is always giving instruction from within. So then Lord is giving him instruction from within, from super soul, but and also from without also. Without he gives instruction from Bhagavad Gita, and within he living entity that his activities in the material world are not conducive to real happiness. So whatever he is doing, that is not correct. That inside call Lord gives through super soul. Just give it up and turn your faith toward me. Then you will be happy. But living entity doesn't hear that. And what conclusion Prabhupada is giving? Thus, the intelligent person who places his faith in the Paramatma or the Supreme Personality of Godhead begins to advance to a blissful eternal life of knowledge. So what Prabhupada is telling, somebody accepts Paramatma and Purusha. Paramatma is another Purusha. Then what will happen? That person will advance in spiritual life. Before also we saw that in verse number 19. There Krishna has mentioned that they will advance. The devotees can understand this. Like that he has mentioned in verse 19. But now what Prabhupada is mentioning here, that one who accepts these three things, he will advance in spiritual life. Krishna also says ahead, we'll see what is. So now in verse 23rd, Krishna has mentioned another Purusha, who is Paramatma. And he, where he is staying? Near to Jiva he is staying. And he, what he is doing? He is just sanctioning Upadrashta, and he is just overseeing Upadrashta, and Anumanta is just sanctioning. These things are doing. So he mentioned like this in 23rd verse. So now in next verse, we know that he's speaking about that's regarding the same topic, and what he's telling in verse 24. So what is the verse? Ya evam vetti purusham prakritim cha gunai sah sarvata vartamanopi na sa bhuyo bhijayate. So what Krishna is telling here, ya evam vetti purusham, one who understands this philosophy. What is the philosophy? That Purushas are soul and super soul. And Prakriti is what? Material nature. Concerning the material nature, the living entity and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. Presently, whoever he may be. So, Prabhupada has, in the last line, if you see, Prabhupada has mentioned the intelligent person who has faith that the Paramatma, in short, Prabhupada has mentioned. He has mentioned only Paramatma. But what Krishna is telling here, that he knows the soul, super soul, and material nature, and what happened with that person, and how they are interconnected, and their interaction is happening through the modes, then he will surely attain liberation. Regardless, however fallen he may be, but if he has faith, then he will achieve liberation. So what one will get by this knowledge, Krishna has told in this verse. Correct? So Acharyas, they are telling, it is mentioned here, regardless of his present position. So regarding that, some points Acharyas are telling. So what they're telling is, even though in this life he may be situated in all sorts of unfavorable circumstances, such as overcome by sleep and other unwanted things, and uncontrolled mind. So whatever he may be facing issues like sleeps and other unwanted things. So whatever problem he might be facing, but he will attain liberation if he has faith. in this knowledge. So they give purport regarding this, his present position, and whatever deficiency he has, he doesn't have the control over mind, but still, what will happen? He will achieve the liberation. And another, some Acharya is telling that if whatever duty he does in his life, whatever his present position, means how we can understand like Arjuna's present position. Who was he? He was a Kshatriya. So, what is his duty? To fight war. So, whatever the person is doing, although he is fighting war, so whatever is the present, he is fighting war, he is cooking, or he is whatever activity he is doing. So, regardless of whatever activity he is doing, according to his duty, or according to his liking, according to his swabhava, whatever activity he is doing, that person will get liberation. So liberation doesn't depend upon his present position or his present activity. Like these acharyas, they have given purport. Clear? So what how Prabhupada is explaining this verse, we'll see. So I will tell who can read. Those who have not read till now, Rahul Prabhu, have you read?
Yes, Prabhuji, sure, I'm ready.
Hmm.
Clear understanding of the material nature, the super soul, the individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible to become liberated and turn to the spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. This is the result of knowledge.
Now, what is the result of knowledge? Krishna has mentioned, and Prabhupada is telling regarding that. That understanding of what material nature, the super soul, and individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible to become liberated. If that when somebody knows, then one will be liberated. Same point Krishna has mentioned. Turn to the spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. So, what Prabhupada is telling, and if we study in last purport, that soul is tatastha, is marginal, and is a marginal energy. So, when this soul is going towards spirituality instead of material nature, and he's not going towards material nature, then he will not be forced to come back to material nature. So this is the result of knowledge. So this should be happen. And after understanding, we should turn to spirituality and towards super soul. This result should happen. Then purpose of knowledge is to understand. To understand distinctly that the living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence. So why we are studying this, what is the purpose of this knowledge? Is understanding this knowledge, we come to know the conclusion that by chance we have fallen into this material existence, and now we want to get out of this material existence. And this thing should happen. This is the purpose of knowledge. And so this should be our purpose only. Purpose. Then next green, somebody who has not read till now. Those who want to read, they can raise hand. No, then I will just tell. Yes.
Right.
Sundari Subhadra Mataji, you can read.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. By his personal endeavor in association with authorities, saintly persons, and a spiritual master, he has to understand his position and then revert to the spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness by understanding Bhagavad Gita as it is explained by the personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again to this material existence and he will be transferred into the spiritual
Institutional
world
site बहुत सारा
for
लाइफ
a
की है तो
blissful
दिखो भी तो हाँ टाइम मिले दिखो
transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful eternal life of knowledge.
Thank you, Mataji. So what is mentioned here that how we can understand our position. So by this personal endeavor in association with authorities, saying last paragraph Prabhupada has mentioned that what is the solution? We have to hear and from the authorities, saintly person, a spiritual master, and he has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness. And so Jiva has to understand his position that he is a spiritual entity, and he has to turn towards spirituality or Krishna consciousness. Then by understanding these, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita by Krishna himself, then it is certain that he will never come back again to the material existence. When he accepts the spirituality, he follows, and then he will not come to these material things. Yadgatvana nivartante. He will be transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful eternal life. He will be transferred there into the spiritual world. So what Krishna has mentioned in this verse 24, that whatever may be the jiva's position, so if he has the knowledge of soul, super soul, and material nature, and their relationship, then what he will attain? He will attain liberation. Correct? This now in verse 25th. And so how one achieves this understanding? Krishna is mentioned. So, ध्यानेनात्मनि पश्यन्ति केचित् आत्मानम् आत्मना अन्ये सांख्येन योगेन कर्मयोगेन चापरे. So now Krishna is mentioning how different people they achieve this understanding differently. Some perceive the super soul with themselves through meditation, dhyana yogi. Others through the cultivation of knowledge, jnani, and still others through the working with fruitive desires. Working without fruitive desires, and they are karma yogis. So the understanding mentioned in the previous verse of soul, super soul, and body and a material nature. So this correct understanding, the different people they receive differently and by different methods. So all methods require the knowledge of these three. So bhakti also requires some knowledge. Can read this. Muskan Mataji.
The Lord informed Arjun that the conditioned soul can be divided into two classes as far as men's search for self-realization is concerned. Those who are atheists, agnostics,
Disconnected. To read. Somebody else can raise hand. Yes, ma'am. Archana Mataji.
Those who are atheists, agnostic, skeptics are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding. But there are others who are faithful in their understanding of the spiritual life, and they are called introspective devotees, philosophers and workers who have renounced fruitive results. Those who always try to establish the doctrine of monism are also counted among the atheist agnostics.
What Prabhupada is mentioning here. Thank you. Prabhupada is telling that Lord informs that conditioned souls can be divided into two classes. And what are these classes? As far as man's search for self-realization is concerned, those who are atheists and agnostic and skeptics are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding, but there are others. One is this category, and other is faithful in their understanding of spiritual life, and they are called introspective devotees, philosophers, and workers who have renounced futile results. Those who always try to establish doctrine of monism are also counted among the atheists, and the monists are in the first category, although Prabhupada mentioned them later, atheist and agnostic. So Prabhupada has given these two categories. So we'll see what is the use of these two categories. Then next pink one is Sharad Prabhu.
In other words, only the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are best situated in spiritual understanding, because they understand that beyond this material nature are the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is expanded as the Paramatma, the Super Soul in everyone, the all-pervading.
Slipper or not up on the converter was
Thank you, bro. So what Prabhupada is now mentioning, among these categories, these two categories, who is the highest? The second category, devotee category, is the highest. And the reason Prabhupada has given here, why they are highest, because they understand that beyond this material nature are the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who is expanded as the Paramatma, the Super Soul in everyone, the all-pervading Godhead. This is the reason, because devotee has knowledge that there is spiritual world and Lord, Supreme Lord is residing there, and he has come to his in this material world as a Paramatma and as a super soul, and he is staying with everybody. So this is the reason why devotees are the highest category. Prabhupada has mentioned. And who will Suryakant Pro? Shrikant Pro. Nice.
Other other words, of course, there are those who try to understand the supreme absolute truth by cultivation of knowledge, and they can be counted in the class of the faithful. The Sankhya philosophers analyze this material world into 24 elements, and they place the individual soul as the 25th item. When they are able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendental to the material elements, they are able to understand also that above the individual soul, there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the 26th element. Thus, gradually, they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in their attitude. They are given a chance to advance to the platform of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Here, it is stated that there are some people who are pure in consciousness and who try to find out the super soul by meditation. And when they discover the super soul within themselves, they become transcendentally situated.
Thank you, bro. So what Prabhupada is telling, first he mentioned the two categories, faithful and faithless. And devotees are faithful. Then he mentioned devotees are highest. Now he is mentioning that Sankhya, another category, Sankhya people, what Sankhya philosopher, what they does, what they do is they tell that material world has 24 elements. We saw the body has 24 elements. We saw in this chapter, and the soul is the 25th element, and the super soul is the 26th element. So they go into the analysis, and so they accept. And so what they are accepting, the material nature, and it has 24 elements. Soul is the 25th, super soul is the 26th. And they are accepting material nature, soul, and super soul. They are different or same. What they are accepting? They are different. All three are different. Means in which category they are coming? Which category they will come? Sankhya philosophers, devotee category, and faithful, and in the category of faithful, second class they will come. Then after that, Prabhupada is telling they are given. Thus, gradually, they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Gradually, they will also become devotees. And those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in their attitude. Who are they without fruitive results? Who they work? What is name for them?
Karma yogi.
Karma yogis. So they are given a chance to advance to the platform of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated that there are some people who are pure in consciousness and who try to find out super soul by meditation. And so what is this category? Another category.
Jnanis,
By meditation.
they are Jnanis.
Yogi.
No, meditation they are finding. No, they are
Yeah.
not Gyanis.
Dhyana yogis.
Dhyana yogis, Ashtanga yogi or Dhyana yogi. And when they discover the super soul within themselves, they become transcendentally situated. And when they, by their dhyana, they find out super soul, and then they're transcendental. And then there's small part that similarly there are others who also try to understand the supreme soul by cultivation of knowledge. They are jnanis, and there are others who cultivate the hatha yoga system and who try to satisfy the supreme personality of Godhead by childish activity. There is another yoga Prabhupada is telling, hatha yoga. And what they do, they do some physical exercise, physical activities they do, with their body, and they try to satisfy the Supreme Lord by childish activity. Yes. Hatha yogis, for them it is difficult little bit to satisfy the Lord. Although they accept the Lord, but their activities are very childish. So these are different people, Lord is telling they can have the understanding. What understanding? Soul, super soul, and material nature. They are different. That understanding who can have? These different categories they can have. And means they are eligible to achieve liberation. Sorry, now we can have some 10 minutes break. Actually, I forgot only. We'll pause for. So what we have discussed, and so this section is starting from the verse 28. And so Lord has told in verse 28, material nature and living entity, both of them are eternal. And in verse 21st word, it is told, Lord has told their function. And what living entity is doing, he is desiring, and material nature is giving bodies and their function, Lord has told. 22nd, what he has told? Um, because of enjoying mentality. And because of their enjoying mentality, Jiva is getting bodies. And 23rd, what Krishna has told them, super soul. And there is another Purusha who is also enjoyer. Then 24th verse, what is told? One who has this understanding of all these three things, soul, super soul, and material nature. Then and that person will get liberation, like that. And in 25th verse, then what Krishna has told, who can get that liberation? And those who can have the jnanis, and then dhyana yogis by meditation, and karmi, and they are getting by karma yoga. So they can get this understanding. And then he has not told about devotees till now. Now in this 26th verse, he will tell about devotees, also how devotees can have this understanding of they are different. We will see. What is the verse? Annetva evam ajanantah श्रुत्वा एभ्यः उपासते श्रुत्वा अन्येभ्यः उपासते तेपि चातित तेपि चातितिर तेपि चातितर अन्येव मृत्युं श्रुतिपरायणा. What Krishna is telling, that again there are those who begin to worship the Supreme Person, and upon hearing about him from others. And this is also another category, that who starts to worship in the Lord by hearing from somebody. And another characteristic of them is, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, before they are not knowing anything, then they heard from somebody else. Like many devotees, how they come when they are studying or they are working, they don't know anything, and they don't have any understanding about spiritual knowledge, but they hear from other devotees, and then they start worshipping the Lord because of their tendency to hear from authorities. So what happened because of that? They also transcend the path of birth and death. They will also transcend the path of death, and they will also achieve the liberation. And it means they will also have the understanding, and because they heard from authorities. Authorities will explain them the soul, super soul, and material nature, and then they will have the understanding and they will achieve the liberation. So this is the category of a devotee category. is about translation. Then you'll understand from purport. Who will read? Shrikant Pro, can you decide who will read?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Shrikant Pro will.
Go ahead. Vaikuntha Bihari Prabhu, you can.
I can read, no? This verse is particularly applicable to modern society because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheist or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy.
Thank you. So what Prabhupada is telling, this verse is particularly for modern society. Means whatever current situation, for them it is there. What happens, some people, they appear, but they do not have any knowledge. And this is Prabhupada's opinion. And then Prabhupada is telling, as for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. If he has the faith and he is a good soul, then only he can advance. When he is not ready to accept the conclusion from devotee, then he will not advance. Then pink one somebody can read.
Whoever wants to read can raise their hand. Srimati Vasudha Mataji.
Krishna Prabhu. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress, especially according to Lord Chaitanya. If he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord.
Thank you, Mataji. So, what regarding this hearing process, Prabhupada is telling, it is very important. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given this process. And by hearing, we can advance simply by hearing. Then Prabhupada is mentioning one of the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. That all men should take advantage of hearing from the realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. No need to change his position. And whoever, what is that verse is? Jnane prayasya udapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiyya varta स्थाने स्थिता श्रुतिगताम तनुवांग मनोभि ये प्रायेषु जितोप्यसि तैस्त्रिलोक्याम. Verse number is 10.14.3. This is the number that verse Prabhupada is mentioning here, and is telling just a translation Prabhupada has paraphrased and that verse translation. And he's telling that whoever we are, whatever is our position, and that we need not change and give up the endeavor to understand. Not give up. So that one. Give up to understand the endeavor absolute truth by speculative reasoning. That endeavor we have to give up. But how we can understand the absolute truth? By hearing. from devotees. Then next. Go on.
Haribol. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person helps one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to whom.
Thank you, bro. So now, Prabhupada, what he's telling, if one is fortunate that he has received the instruction, he has taken shelter from the pure devotee, and he is hearing from that pure devotee about the spiritual topic, about self-realization, and following in his footstep, that devotee's footstep he is following. Then what happens? Gradually elevated to the position of pure devotee. He will also become pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended. Krishna has mentioned this process of hearing. This is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as a so-called philosopher's, faithful hearing from authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead. What is the benefit of hearing? Prabhupada has mentioned, because as we are common man, and we don't have the capacity and to read all the scriptures, but just if we hear from the pure devotee, and then we can also liberate, and we can also go back to spiritual world. And means what spiritual world we can go back. And what we can understand here, that in this verse, Krishna has mentioned another method. And what is that method? Method of hearing. And who practices that method? Devotee. And in essence, what conclusion we can make? Devotional service is easiest method. Because what we have to do in devotional service, we have to just hear. Other processes, there is lot of difficulties, and endeavor is so much. And this conclusion we can bring out from this verse. Devotional service is very easy to practice. So now, here with the verse number 26, our section finishes. So now, how many questions Krishna has answered till now? Somebody can tell. All six. All six questions Krishna has answered. So in one sense, this chapter has completed here. And then what Krishna is telling from verse 27. So verse, how many verses are there? 35 verses. So from this verse 27 to 35. So they are bonus verses or extra verses in this chapter. What is the purpose? Why Krishna is telling that? And so our acharyas, they tell that in these verses, Krishna is explaining about whatever he has told. And so meaning of that and what he has already spoken. So he is adding with these verses. So whatever he has spoken regarding these six things. So he is adding in his answer. So that is the purpose of this section, and from 27 to 35. And we'll go ahead. So what is the verse 27? Yavat sanyayate kinchit satvam sthavar jangamam kshetrajna sanyogat tadvidhi bharatarshabha So what Krishna is told, the Bharatarshabha, or chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, what is both the moving and non-moving, and Sthavar Jangam, and is only a combination of the field of activities, is a combination of what? Kshetra Kshetrajna Sanyogat, and the knower of the field, and Kshetra and Kshetrajna Sanyogas. So what Krishna is adding here is telling Arjuna, so whatever you are seeing in this existence, in this material world, and whatever is moving and non-moving, and means everything, and in this material world is only a combination of the Kshetra and Kshetrajna and nothing else. So how we can understand this? So we'll see from the purport. We'll read this. Srikantu.
No one has raised a hand. Anyone wants to read?
Prabhuji, I'll read.
Yes, Mataji.
Hello.
Yes, Mata.
Hare Krishna. Both material nature and the entity which are existing before the creation of the cosmos are explained in this verse. Whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and the material nature. There are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills which are not moving. And there are many existences which are moving. And all of them are but combinations of material nature and the superior nature, the living entity. Without a touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. The relationship between matter and nature it's eternally going on. And this combination is effected by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is a controller of both the superior and inferior nature. The material nature is created by him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature. And thus, all these activities and manifestation take place.
So, Krishna has told that whatever is existing in this material world, so is the combination of the Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So now Prabhupada is mentioning there that material nature and the living entity which were existing before the creation of the cosmos are explained in this verse. So whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. So whatever is created by material nature, according to the desire of living entity, so that is combination of living entity and material nature, nothing else. There are many manifestations like moving and non-moving. Prabhupada has mentioned. Then after that, without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, who is that superior nature? Living entity. And nothing can grow. So without the touch of living entity, matter cannot grow. It is very important. Then how the living entity is connected to matter? Because living entity is where it is situated, it is in the body. And so in that way, living entity is connected to matter or material nature. Nothing, and the relationship between matter and nature is eternally going on, and that we know that matter is connected to material nature. Body is coming from material nature. And this combination is effected by the Supreme Lord. So living entity is accessing the body through Supreme Lord because Supreme Lord is sanctioning. That is why it is called effected by Supreme Lord, because he's sanctioning. So this is the relation. And living entity is living entities desires are sanctioned by Supreme Lord. And then living entity has access to the body. Then therefore he is the controller of both superior and inferior natures. Therefore, Supreme Lord, and he is controller of living entity also and matter also. The material nature is created by him, and the superior nature is placed in the material nature, and thus all these activities and manifestation takes place. And then what Supreme Lord is doing? Supreme Lord has only created material nature, and the superior nature means he has placed the living entity Jiva, and is placed in the material nature under uh, in the body. He has mentioned, he has placed. Thus, all these activities and manifestation takes place. All these activity and whatever is manifested, and how it is manifesting, because of Supreme Lord only it is manifesting. But it is combination of just Kshetra and Kshetrajna, nothing else. So this is another point Krishna has added. And why living entity is called superior nature here? We have studied this in 7th chapter. There it is mentioned para prakriti. Living entity as para prakriti. That's why it is called superior nature. Clear? And this is a 27th verse. Now, when Krishna is adding further, what he is telling, samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyas sva vinashantam yah pashyati sa pashyati. And that person can see, okay, one who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understand that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed actually sees. And in essence, what Krishna is telling, one who sees the super soul means soul and super soul, they are present in all bodies and all living entities. All bodies, they are present. And body is what? Destructible. And body is destructible. And both of them are what? They are not destroyed, not destructible or destroyed. And this point Krishna has told. And one who sees this and one who has this understanding, and a body is destroyed and soul and super soul, they are not destroyed, and is the correct understanding. Actually, he is saying, and this is the correct understanding. Okay? This is the correct understanding one can have. Somebody can read alone.
Anyone who by good association can see three things combined together: the body, the proprietor of the body or individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, is actually in knowledge.
Same, man. Whatever translation is there, Prabhupada has written. Then next, green.
Unless one has the association of a real knower of spiritual subjects, One cannot see these three things. Those who do not have such association are ignorant. They simply see the body and they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. But actually, it is not so. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the super soul exist, and they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms.
So what after that Prabhupada has mentioned that who one has knowledge of these three things. How one will have this knowledge? We studied last either by practice of these different yoga process mentioned in verse 25th, and or either by practice of bhakti yoga by hearing. And so easiest is what? Hearing. And then how the person will have the associate this knowledge? By association, by hearing. In association, he hears, and he has that understanding. Like all of us have heard this, that these three things are different. Then what happens? Those who do not have such association are ignorant. And one who has not heard is ignorant. And they simply see the body and they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is destroyed. And they think body as self. And when body is destroyed, they cry and they go in depression. But actually, it is not so. But this is correct. Is this correct? No, it is not correct. This is ignorance. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and super soul exist. Although body is destroyed, soul and super soul exist. They go on eternally in very various moving and non-moving forms, and eternally they will continue. Yeah. This same point, Prabhupada. How they come to know that part Prabhupada has mentioned by association. Next, the blue one.
Yes, Rahul.
The Sanskrit word Parameswara is sometimes translated as the individual soul, because the soul is the master of the body, and after the destruction of the body, he transfers to another form. In that way, he is a master. He is master. But there are others who interpret this Parameswara to be the super soul. In either case, both the super soul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening.
So what is Prabhupada is mentioning? The Sanskrit word Parameshwara, and it is mentioned in the verse Parameshwara word. There it is mentioned. Tishtantam Parameshwaram. Regarding this word Prabhupada is mentioning. So this word is sometimes translated as individual soul also. And that is why, because the soul is the master of the body, and after the destruction of the body, he transfers to another body. In that way, he is master. But there are others who interpret the Parameshwara to be the super soul. In either case, both the super soul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see. So some translate it as soul and some translate it as super soul. So Prabhupada is telling that doesn't matter. Whatever you take the meaning, everything is, both of them are eternal only. That doesn't matter. No, this is the correct understanding. So what Krishna has mentioned, and now verse 27th he has mentioned that 27th what he has mentioned, that both soul and super soul. Exactly the words were the so kshetra, whatever is the creation, whatever is visible and whatever is existence, and everything is created. And by the combination of Kshetra and Kshetrajna, by the Lord. Is the whatever is visible is the combination of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Then verse 28, and Krishna has mentioned the correct understanding of what? Soul, super soul, and material nature. Then now in verse 29, Krishna is telling Samam Pashyam hi sarvatra and Samavatishtham Ishwaram na hinasti atmanatmanam tato yati paramgati. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being doesn't degrade himself by his mind. One who has this correct understanding mentioned in verse 28, and that person, and what is he is saying, the super soul is equal and he is not partial, and in every living being and doesn't degrade himself by his mind. So his mind cannot make him degrade. And he has very strong mind, and such a person who has the understanding. Thus, he approaches the transcendental destination. That's why he will get liberation. Transcendental destination means, in one sense, he will achieve the liberation. Param Gati. Purport. Pink one, somebody can read.
The living entity, by accepting his material existence, has situated differently than in his spiritual existence. But if one understands that the Supreme is situated in his Paramatma manifestation everywhere, that is, if one can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every living thing, he does not degrade himself by a destructive mentality, and he therefore gradually advances to the spiritual world.
Prabhupada is mentioning that one who sees the Paramatma and super soul in every living entity, because he is present in all bodies, and one who sees that, and what he is seeing, he that Paramatma is equal, he is not partial. That also he is seeing. Then, with such vision, that such a living entity will not degrade himself. He will advance only. Krishna is telling. What is the use of this knowledge? He can advance spiritually. And one who is applying in his life. The mind is generally addicted to sense gratification. Now, Prabhupada is telling the mind generally, what it does, generally it is attached to, although mind can act, we have studied in 6th chapter that mind can act as a friend and enemy. Both these role mind can take. But generally, which role mind takes? The role of enemy, by engaging us in sense gratification. But for this person, the mind will take the role of friend, the one who sees the Paramatma in all living entities. Now, time is over. We'll stop here. Somebody wants to